Alright guys, so let's be honest. In the Division 2, the topics of PvP and PvE are extremely negative. Both sides are always accusing the other of being what ruins builds, and now to be fair, this has to do mostly with basically just, the world crashing DZ that merges both player types. As well as the third type, like me, the PvE VPer. I'm not trying to sound like, I know everything, but I do try to step back and look at the game's issues as a whole. I think the biggest problem is that many people only see what they want, and not actually what is best for the game most of the time. I'm going to say some things that some people actually might not like, but I feel it really needs to be said. Those topics include why the DZ needs PvP, why the current rogue system is awful, why modifiers, especially to skills, are very poorly done, and basically just why the game needs a PvE area that allows for multiple groups to work together. If you understand my points and enjoy the video, remember to hit the like button and leave a comment. I'm trying to actively make the game a better experience, which is only actually possible if you help me get the developers' attention. If not, then don't be surprised when the toxic people are the ones getting listened to, like has been the case for most of the game's lifespan. The DZ is by nature a lawless free-for-all zone designed around the rogue and white knight behaviors. Going into the game's lore, it was basically just, designed that way because it was overrun by the worst people preying on the weak. Dead agents and rogue agents, and basically just free-for-all. Originally, it provided the very actual unique PvE experience, but it had increased rewards and that kind of made it riskier. But it was also a better place to just farm gear. Without the PvP, the zone loses a large part of what makes it actually unique. Since the LZ now has actually far superior PvE mechanics to me, unless reasons exist for it to be played, like, the actual vendor change that they did, the unique items that are actually now locked in there, or the PvE, PvP elements, the zone would pretty much just be useless and boring. The AI are not interesting, and the landmarks are pretty far from engaging. I mean, on its own, the PvE in the DZ is just terrible. It really is the worst PvE in the game. I understand that some players refuse to accept that another player can kill them, and basically just take their stuff. But this was the whole point of the DZ in the game. If you hate that element, you really just should not go in there. I mean, you have no point in there. You should not get the rewards, and you should just stop acting like it is a deliberate attempt to force you into playing something you don't want to, that no one's forcing you to. You're forcing yourself to want that gear, that's it. For the most part, many of us are adults, and if you don't find it fun, then act like an adult, and stop trying to ruin a mode you have no interest in just because you want to feel included. However, I'm going to say this. The devs need to stop with this stupidity and tighten up the rogue system to actually play better. The DZ has zero balance when it comes to rogue penalties versus farmer penalties. As a rogue, you can run out over and over with basically just no risk to anything that you've done. For PvE-focused players, they could spend an hour or more farming for some specific loot, only to basically just risk it every second. To make matters worse, rogues can still, for some reason, use the extraction chopper, quickly erase all their bad deeds, risk absolutely nothing, and be rewarded even more with their own caches. The balance in the DZ is an utter joke when it comes to the flow of gameplay. I'm not sure if the devs understand this, or if they even care, but the reason many players avoid the DZ is because it is intentionally made toxic, one-sided, and boring. Rogues need to have something to risk losing, otherwise this mechanic is just pretty much abusive, and honestly, I understand it's not fun for most players. This is not a get-good situation. Why would you add more encouragement to take players' collected items and basically just have nothing but rewards for the players doing it? If dying rogue actually had a penalty that impacted players, or picking up stolen items had some sort of substantial negative, like a cooldown timer that prevented you from doing things, I think it would actually encourage more players in the DZ overall. It would also mean that the true reason for going rogue was to steal someone's loot. Meaning that unless you actually escaped with your stolen loot, you would have nothing to gain. Then, of course, being hit with an actual penalty for dying rogue. Now, I understand that there needs to be some sort of toxicity in the DZ. But encouraging it with crap mechanics is just low quality and low effort. And this brings me to the fairness of actual PvP in the game. It is obvious that the devs have hated and intentionally restricted the role of skills in PvP. Not only can most skills be disrupted or destroyed, but players can add 100% hazard protection and basically just ignore all status effects, or add 90% explosive resistance to remove any threat from the few remaining damage skills. I mean, I'm not trying to make the skill system OP when it comes to PvP, but being able to rush through skills too easily just kind of like negates any of the defensive-minded tactics that you have as a skill build. Examples like this are another reason why many players stay out of the DZ. Because unless you explicitly build to fight players and know all the details of every modifier, your build, which might be great in missions, is absolutely trash in the DZ. Division 1 had the same problems. Talents and skills were designed to be effective in combat. But because of the damage modifiers, things that depended on damage done became pointless because you were just not doing enough damage to make them useful against other players. Some skills like the shock turret had a flat effect that no matter your skill power, they did the same exact thing, which was abused by most PvP players with no skill power. The same issues are ruining Division 2's PvP. Too much time is being spent to appease the Call of Duty type players who basically just want to thrust their soft little E-peens into someone's face. No longer do defensive-based skills exist that can actually allow players to retreat from rogues. The DZ is not fun to many because it basically just punishes what makes the Division fun in general. It is a broken shell of a mode designed to entice only the most basic form of PvP, which most Division players aren't here for. It is as if tactics and defensive playstyles were removed in the mistaken belief that maybe if it was more like Fortnite, players would like it more. I'm sorry, but I bought a real game because I want to play like an adult. If you want to make a shooter only, then do that. You included deadly skills in the game, making them weaker and easy to ignore to appeal to players who can't think or counter. It's just lazy. Again, I'm not saying skills should be overpowered, and they should not insta-down everyone. But if you want players to feel comfortable and actually populate the DZ without the need for forced low population transfers, well, PvE tactics need to have some relevance in the DZ. NPCs rushing into a flame turret, it's basically just going to get them killed, okay? But if a player does it, it's pretty much just ignored. It's almost a guaranteed emote in 2 to 3 seconds. Skills come with so much notifications and warnings that any player who actually considers themselves good can easily avoid them. Players should have some sort of need to neutralize skills before rushing someone in cover. To me, this is the point of defensive-minded skills. So why is it seen as bad in the community? Why are the basic foundations of the game ignored to make a small portion of the community happy? Even if Massive did fix many of the things I addressed, there would still be a large portion of never DZers. Nothing except a full PvE DZ would actually make them happy. The issue with that, to me, is that the DZ is not just a PvE zone. The whole idea was for the unknown player element. However, it does baffle me that there are no options for multiple groups to exist in the same open world type environments. I mean, I would honestly love to actually team up with 11 or more other agents and fight some of the most, difficult PvE stuff in kind of like a public event area. It would be cool to have these things because, I don't want to run the raid over and over again because that's the only endgame PvE. Many want to act like the DZ provides this type of experience or the LZ is good enough, but the truth of the matter is, it's not. The LZ is not difficult. Plus, it only allows you to actually play with 3 other players. It does not have much random nature to it, and for the most part, it basically just feels like an empty, lifeless area that you're just running from point to point. The DZ does nothing new or exciting in the PvE segment, and honestly, if you think it's good, I'm amazed because I'm bored as shit with the PvE in the DZ. While players do bring some randomness to the equation, nothing in the DZ has a structure that forces agents to actually work together. There's no, I'm going to save this group by joining them. No, there's no, anything. Even if the DZ had some sort of raid-level teamwork required events, we all know trolls would just ruin them all the time. Another issue that people bring up as to why there shouldn't be any sort of PvE DZ is basically just centered around earning loot. And I agree that loot should be earned. And I do not support the idea that gear locked to the DZ should be included in a PvE multi-agent type zone. Obviously, there's different factors there. But you shouldn't be comparing the PvE version to a full-on PvE VP version. In fact, it should actually be given some of its own unique items to encourage more players to actually work together in that newer zone. The biggest problem is that people keep forgetting that games are designed to be fun. But if players are not actually having fun with the activities that they're given, then they're just going to avoid a large portion of your game. So wouldn't it not make sense to actually come up with an area that those players want to enjoy? That encourages a larger game population overall? If the DZ still has tons of unique items to risk farming for, most players will still play it. Having another option does not kill the DZ, it just gives other players something else to do. The raid did not kill the DZ. Underground and Survival from the first game did not kill the DZ, so why would a new mode with a completely different focus do so now? If you're still here, I actually just want to thank you. The people that have left are probably just the ones that we don't actually need in the game. They are probably the ones that actually make this game worse only by wanting their wishes above everyone else's for no other reason than because they want to flash an EP. The game is not a one playstyle or one build. It is many, with many, and for many. Yes, we can have lots of unique things that players want, and we can make those more specific to the type of player. The hardest difficulty of the raid, for example, being the only place to get the Eagle Bearer. You know, that's fair. It's the hardest difficulty. Only the Eagle Bearer drops there. But there's a point at which having something that no one is playing becomes a wasted effort. Players were actually avoiding the raid, so they made an intelligent decision and added an easy mode to at least get people playing it and trying it out. If players hate the DZ, make it better. Or add a PVE zone that provides a different experience for those players, but focuses on teamwork-based battles with different loot pools. If people use skills in defensive ways, then ensure that style can compete in the DZ. Nobody is stopping players from using EMP on those skills. But the game does not actually give it any relevance now to do so. In the end, if PvPers are as skilled as they believe, they should easily be able to counter defensive playstyles, right? And basically just, welcome a new challenge, which is something I deeply miss from Division 1. Fighting a group of rogues in the DZ who have basically just dug in and are, fighting everyone else from cover. Seeing how long they can fight off multiple groups, just until someone dies. That was it. It was basic and fun for both sides. Honestly, it was easily avoided if you didn't want to do it. If you just wanted to farm, you knew where the rogues were because they were here fighting everyone else, and you could just go off and do your own thing. That was great. That was fun. Alright guys, that'll do it for me. I thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. I'll see you in the next one.